Getting ready to etch this blade. Got it sanded to 1,500 grit. Cleaning off all the oils really, really well on it. Want it nice and clean. We'll stick it in our ferric chloride mixture here. 1 part ferric chloride to 4 parts water at room temperature. That's looking good. Oh, that is probably one of my best feather patterns. It's so perfectly uniform and fine. That looks great. All the layers are going through it pretty straight. You can tell by looking at the spine. You can see all these layers going through here pretty straight, which is normally what you want. You don't want them going on too much of a crazy angle because it can make distortion in the pattern. My coffee pot's loud. It's almost time for another coffee break. I'm sanding all the oxides off the blade. I like to do that every 5 to 8 minutes or so as I'm etching. And the reason for that is if you sand those oxides off, you'll just get a cleaner looking etch. I'm using 3000 grit right now, by the way. I used to just hold the blade under the running water and do all the sanding in the sink that way, but I found it's a lot better to actually bring it out here and clamp it up and really sand the oxides off. Because when you're just kind of holding the blade and sanding on it, you can't really get all the stuff off very well. Something you'll notice here, the center of the feather pattern starts out really close to the center of the ricasso. That's the way I want it. I like it right in the center, and then I like it to come down and drop down so it's kind of in the center of the blade after it leaves the ricasso. I don't want it in the exact center of the blade. I actually want it ever so slightly towards the spine for aesthetic purposes. That's the way. I like it. If you do a feather pattern, take extra care to forge in your ricasso and get that pattern to come out in the center of the ricasso, at least where it starts at the tang. And then it kind of drops down and then goes down the center of the blade. What I don't want to see when I see a feather pattern, I don't want to see that nice centered pattern on the blade just continue straight through the ricasso and be way off-centered, back here in the ricasso. I like to see that it was like forged in there. And it's not the same for every pattern. That's just for like the feather patterns. For a mosaic pattern, most of the time I don't want to forge in the ricasso because that'll distort the pattern in a way that I don't want. But with feather pattern, it distorts the pattern in a good way and puts the feather pattern in the center of the ricasso, and then it like flows down the blade. I'm gonna go clean the blade off and then we'll put it back in the acid and repeat that whole process another 2 to maybe 3 times, depending on how old my acid is and how deep I want the etch. And that changes on every knife depending on what kind of pattern it is. If it's a coarse pattern or a fine pattern, you have to etch it a little different. Back to the house. The blade's almost done etching, so I'm gonna go ahead and get the coffee mixture ready to go. We're gonna use an instant coffee mix for that, and I've got some hot water in a pan here. Coffee break. No, let's not have regular coffee. Instant coffee break. Oh, that's strong. Was that like a whole cup of coffee worth on my tongue? Oh, too much.
Just smile for us.
Too much. Too much. Oh, water. Oh. Okay, let's put the instant coffee in the pan of water and not ever drink it. Ever. This is Nescafe Classico Dark Roast. I'm using 100 cups worth in about a half a gallon of water, maybe 3/4 of a gallon. The water doesn't really matter. In between a half gallon and 1 gallon works great. Nescafe, reach out. We might be able to do some kind of deal because I use a lot of your coffee. Just don't ever drink it. can Photoshop that and it'll say Kyle.
Sure.
The next day.
Guys, I have sad news. I left the Hunter in the instant coffee mix all night long overnight, and it has ruined the blade. The problem with leaving it in the coffee too long was it made it too beautiful! Too beautiful for the human eye to behold. You have to wear some kind of super protective eye protection in order to look at it, or it will make your eyes explode!
Can I see it?
Whoa, that is so pretty. I want to look at it with my real eyeballs.
Josh, no!
My eyes! The pain!
The next day.
Getting ready for the gun bluing. I've probably been putting it off a little bit because it's a terrifying, dangerous process and it sometimes doesn't go well. The fittings are all sanded to 3000 grit. All I have to do before I blue them is buff them. 20 minutes later. Waiting for these salts to heat up. Got all the parts buffed and they're in the chemical cleaner now. And as soon as they've been in there for a little while, I'll take them out, rinse them, and get them in the bluing salts. The salt's up to temperature, ready to go. But before we do that, I have a question for you. You want to take your knife making to the next level? If so, then check out the link in the description. This takedown Bowie knife course goes in detail, 27 lessons, over 14 hours of content, showing in depth from start to finish how I make a takedown Bowie knife with a 10-inch blade. Oh, and you can use coupon code LEARN to save 20% right now. So go check it out. And now back to our regularly scheduled knife making. I've got a bad feeling about this. Hope I didn't put him in too slow. Nervous laugh.
You can actually put them in too slow?
Yeah, this stuff's picky. If you put it in really slow and it's getting like little bubbles of this foam like splatting on part of it that's not submerged, it might like create spots, I think, possibly. Taking the pommel nut, rinsing it out, off, put it in the boiling water and let it eat away all the excess salts that are on it. You don't want to leave excess bluing salts like down inside the parts because it can slowly like creep out and create a really nasty like rust to grow from the inside of the part, like down in little cracks and voids and stuff. You want to neutralize that salt really well in boiling water. I'm going to take the pommel out, go ahead and rinse it off and get it in the boiling water.
Did it look black?
Looked black for more hours, that. But I didn't really inspect it closely. Got all the pieces in the boiling water to get rid of the excess bluing salts. And I'll start taking out the first pieces and taking them inside and rinse them off under some cold water and get them dried off. And then we'll be ready to move on to the next stage with these pieces. Guard looks perfect. Perfect. The frame looks perfect. Perfect. At least this piece. I'm getting a headache. This is too stressful. The bottom frame piece looks perfect. Or big thumbs up on all the blued parts. I'm using West System epoxy here, and I'm using the slow hardener. It takes like 12 or 24 hours or something to fully harden. I'm also going to use a little colloidal silica that West System also sells as one of their products. And it's like these little tiny fibers, and you put it in there and it kind of acts as rebar inside the epoxy. And you can also use it to thicken the epoxy up for different types of applications if you want. I'm a pretty strong advocate against using your regular two-part epoxies because they don't really have great shelf lives and stuff, and I've used them in the past, but these days I try to pretty much only stick to using this high quality West System stuff, because any of the regular like 2-part epoxies are pretty much not as good as what could be used. And as far as the research I've done, and as far as talking to a couple other knife makers and stuff, John White being a huge advocate for this West System. It's actually made for the marine industry, marine grade stuff. And it's made to be exposed to sunlight and everything quite a bit, whereas the other ones actually can break down in sunlight. Not that it's going to be exposed to sun, but I just want to use the best quality stuff I can get my hands on. You got to mix this stuff really well. It's also not like your regular 2-part, you know, cheap 2-part epoxies where you can just barely mix it and it works. This stuff, you want to mix it really, really well. All right, I think we're ready to go. Only want a very little bit. I just want to coat the surface, and that's it, because I don't want a bunch of epoxy getting all over, making a huge mess. And I also don't want a whole bunch of epoxy like squishing off on the inside, because that might make it so the tang won't go through the knife. So just a thin coat's all we need. These pins are going to need to come out after this is set, so that's a little scary. Hopefully they'll come out okay, because they're going to be replaced with silver pins later. Let's do this other frame piece. Make sure I do the right side. All right, go ahead and put this on the handle. Trying to keep my fingers nice and clean. Again, I want to stress that I do not want to get this epoxy all over the place. Now I'm going to go ahead and coat this surface, and we'll put the other half of the mammoth ivory on. Got a little more to hold on to now that they're on the handle. All right, put our little sandwich together here. That feels really satisfying. That looks good. We don't want to clamp it tight. We just want to lightly clamp it. We don't want to squish all the glue out of there. I'm just going to put one on each end. I'm not going to put any in the middle. All right, we just need to clean it up and let it dry overnight. I'm gonna keep this leftover epoxy and keep an eye on it, and then I'll know when this is set up fully hard, the handle will be ready to go too. I'll put that in the house as well.
The next day.
So I've already taken out the pins that were in here. They came out with these vice grips. I've also cleaned up the frame and done an inspection on that, and it looks really good, nice and clean. I'm gonna get this thing all taped up and protected, and then we'll start putting the silver pins in and doming them. Next thing I want to do is clean up the pins with a Scotch-Brite wheel and a protective plate, and then tape and a buffing wheel after. The reason the tape is on here is because I like to do a little heavy buffing before I go to light buffing. And if you buff around these pins heavily, when the ivory's exposed, it'll leave like weird grooves behind the pin where the buffing wheel like went around the pin and started cutting out this groove in the ivory. Now I'm gonna go to a lighter buffing wheel and lightly buff the ivory and the pins for their final finish. Woo! That sure makes them shiny. You can see myself in each little pinhead. I just realized what a new knife smells like to me. A new knife to me smells like green masking tape. Probably the reason is I use a whole bunch of it right towards the end of the project, wrapping up this and wrapping up that and buffing on this. So whenever I think new knife, I think the smell of green tape. I'm just finishing up the sharpening of this knife using Dad's really nice whetstone, non-wet. Don't get mad at me, Dad. Once it's sharpened, I'm gonna go ahead and do the final assembly and this thing will be done and you guys can see what it looks like finished. And I can see what it looks like finished. I've seen all the finished pieces, but there's something that is really exciting about seeing it all put together finished versus just seeing finished pieces. It looks good. Is it sharp? Super shiny. Super sharp.
Oh.
You just push it straight down my leg and it just removes everything. Beautiful. I'm gonna go ahead and slide the guard on carefully. Got the lineup pins in. Does it still line up after putting the handle, gluing the handle together? Well, that wasn't slowly, that was more of a snap. Oh man, these black fittings with this light colored mammoth ivory. People are always talking about the dark colored ivories, but the light colored stuff with dark fittings, there's where your contrast is at. If I put the pommel, oh man, look at that. That's pretty. Pommel. Hopefully it still fits on there properly. Yeah, I think so. It is time once again to make like the Avengers and assemble! Get it close, and then make sure I'm not holding the edge of the knife. Cut myself. Set.
Flies out of your hand.
Or cuts my hand palm wide open. Holy moly. That looks good. Yeah, I might have tightened it a tiny smidge, but it's good. Oh, it feels good. Feels so good. Feels so good. Oh, yeah. Oh, it feels nice. It feels expensive. It's got this weight to it. I skeletonized the frame. I'm glad I did, but it's still got a nice little heft to it. Oh, it's a big hunter. One of the biggest hunters I've ever done. I love it. I love it, I love it, I love it. It's super nice. Definitely the fanciest hunter I've ever done. All this gold inlay, I love it. One of the cleanest, most uniform feathers ever. Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. You're so beautiful to me. Can't you see? I'm done. Drop the mic. Yeah, the blade's like 6.5 inches or somewhere right around there. It's nice. It's really nice. I can't say anything else about it. It really came out good. It came out really good. Again, I couldn't be more pleased with how this knife came out. It is great. It is really, really nice. Definitely one of my nicest hunters ever, and one of the largest hunters I've ever done. I am so happy with it. So happy with it. Thanks so much for watching, and may the forge be with you. Bye-bye!
Bye bye.